Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be repotting my field maple. I last repotted this tree 2 years ago. So let's go back in time and have a look at the root system and how I pruned the roots 2 years ago. The next tree I'll be working on today is a field maple, and this tree was given to me by David from the Toronto Bonsai Society. Here's a look at the field maple. I've already pruned it up. So all I need to do today is sort out the roots and repot it into a larger pot. All right, I'll begin the combing of the root system. Starting from the center of the tree, combing outwards. And we'll see what kind of a root system we have. Looks like the seedling's growing in nice bonsai soil, so that should help us out. So let's get rid of those fine roots first. Let's prune these off. They're way too high on the tree. I pruned off a lot of the roots that were too high in the root base. My root base level will be down here. That's where most of the major roots start. I get a little extra trunk height and it tapers nicely all the way down to this root base here. So that's pretty good. It's a good start for a radial root system. I had to cut off one big root here. It was growing out sideways and curling upwards. So I just cut it off on an angle. That was this root here. Quite a, it was sticking up like that. So that had to come off. So I'm going to clean up, wash my roots, and then we'll come back for the root pruning. All right, I'll give the root system a wash. There's one growing out the bottom here that I've got to prune off. It's just growing too straight down. It's not radial. Let's get that untangled. There. There's one here. You can see it grows out, curls around, and comes back. So I'm going to prune it off here. Get rid of that. Another one here. It's hit the side of the pot. You can see it's curled around with the pot. So I'll prune it back to here, and it may even come off further once we get underneath here. And I think that's about all I can do this time, which is quite a bit. I think that's really going to improve the way the root system grows and thicken up the base of the tree. Not too bad. I think I'm quite happy with that as a first root pruning. Just put a little bit of soil around it. Like that. And then I'll work that soil in just a little bit. My priority for this tree now is to develop that root system. I've got it started, it's underway. So I want to just let the top of the tree grow wild this summer so it gets lots of root growth that fills this pot. So the next time I go to repot this tree, I'll have more roots to choose from. And I can further develop that nice radial root system that tapers down and flows down into the soil. And the top of the tree, the styling will come later on in the tree's life. That's not a priority right now. My priority is developing that root system. The only reason I can repot a lot of these trees this early in the year is because I have them in the greenhouse. It's kind of a controlled environment. I can heat it at night if the temperature is dropping below freezing. So I can kind of control the temperature in here until the true spring arrives outdoors. We are back to present day time now, so I'm going to repot the tree, sort the roots out once again, and put it in a better pot. Here is a look at the field maple. So it's been growing really well. It's thickened up a lot. It's getting a little more mature. So let's get it out of the pot. Okay. I'll loosen up the tree in the pot. Pull it out. There it is. So let's have a look at the root base. So lots of roots. You can see there's a few roots that are active, but not very many. So it's, still a good time to repot the tree. Okay, I'm going to begin combing out the roots. I can already see one surface root that's not very radial. It goes on a bit of an angle, so that will require some correction. Now, down here I will have a drainage screen. I'm going to try and get out. Wow, lots of roots at the bottom here. So maples like this, I generally would recommend repotting every 2 years minimum. You can repot them every year if they're growing really well. But for a young tree like this, every 2 years is probably ideal. It gives them lots of strength after the root pruning to recover and start growing with a lot of vigor, building up lots of energy over the winter, and then they can grow really well after this root pruning because there's lots of stored energy in the tree from a vigorous growing season last summer. Okay, now I've got to get that drainage screen out the bottom. It's kind of fused in there. Lots of roots have grown through it. And you can just cut it off because this is the second repotting. I know the root system is up high in the pot, and I could safely cut all these lower roots off because I won't be using them anyway. Once the drainage screen's out, it's a lot easier to comb the roots. You'll find it opens up the bottom of the root base here. Wow. Okay, so that's got the drainage screen out. And now I can start combing from the bottom here. So I would say that this tree was getting close to being root bound. There's a lot of roots all throughout the soil. So my plans, I have lots of field maple seedlings, and eventually I'm going to assemble it into a forest. And I considered doing it this year, but all my young field maple seedlings leafed out early, and this one's a little later. And I thought, I think I better leave them grow one more year, develop them a little stronger before I go assembling them into a forest. I kind of want to get the root bases sorted out before they all get assembled in the forest. And I think the other trees are just a bit young. If I put them in a large forest pot, the roots will just grow wild, and I won't get, those nice radial root bases on each of the forest trees, which is kind of important in a maple forest to get good looking roots on the trees. So I'm not seeing any active roots yet. The trees, perfect time for repotting. The buds are swelling. I'm just starting to see a bit of green on the buds now. So, it'll be leafing out probably this week, especially with this warm weather we're having now. Today is a high of 14 degrees Celsius, which is quite a change from the snow we had just a few days ago. Okay, it's pretty well bare rooted. I'm going to take it to my washing station now and just clean it up and try and get all the remaining soil out of the root system. It makes it nicer for root pruning when you have no soil because it's not dulling your tools so much, and you can clearly see the root system that you're pruning. Into the water it goes. Just sorting out the roots, untangling them,
There's a lot of crossing roots in the system that I'm kind of tearing out or sorting out. Trying not to tear them, but it's always happens. You have to tear through a few crossing roots to get the radial roots on track. I like the root system where you can just run the root rake through all the roots without knots and tangles. Okay, it's time to go back into the greenhouse.
Here's a look at the root system now. Interesting. So I'm going to start up top here. There's a dead root here I can remove. And then this one, you can see my root plane is down here and this root is too high, so I need to remove it totally. So I'll come in and cut it off. There's a root here that's kind of sticking up. I'll get rid of that one. This one, it's also sticking up too high. Get rid of that. It doesn't flow down from the trunk into the soil. There's one here that's too high, sticking up. So this one here, it's fairly thick. Of all my surface roots, it's fairly thick. And it's not too far off radial. I'll prune away this part of it. And it subdivides here, so I'm going to prune this one off, keeping it a little shorter, keeping the strong vigor out of it so the other roots catch up in thickness. There's one going sideways here I'll get rid of. That one's gone. There's a root here sticking up here. There's one sticking up here. Now I think this one's a bit high. I'm going to get rid of that one. And this one goes a strange direction. It's not radial, so I'll get rid of that. There's one sticking up there. Sticking up there. Well, it's getting the surface roots on track. I'm still a little concerned about this thick one. There's one I can prune away here that's going a strange direction. Yeah, I think I've got to take it back a little further. Now on the bottom of the root base, I notice there's a few roots sticking straight down, like this one I'll prune off. And there's one sticking down here I can remove. There's one here. There's one kind of growing from the inside here I can remove. And when I say remove, I just prune them off short, so the roots live, but they're just very short. Because you want to keep your roots on the bottom of the root base too. You just want to keep them under control. So here's one that's sticking down too far. This one. That's getting the root base a little flatter on the bottom. Let's go back up top now. Kind of flatten out the root base and I'll comb it out. like that. And then I can do a profile prune. You can see some of these roots are really long, some of them are shorter, so this will kind of equalize the vigor. So I'll come in around and trim all the long roots back, balancing the overall vigor of the root system. Then I'm going to continue flattening out the bottom here by pruning off these roots that are angled downwards. This helps keep the root base thin. So if you do want to put it in a shallow pot someday, you won't have a big thick root system. And all the radial roots help thicken up the trunk. It gives it a nice flare at the base of the trunk, because all the radial roots are doing the work feeding the tree. I think a little more combing now. And now I can come in and do more of a detailed root pruning. So there's a root here. You can see part of it grows out and then goes back underneath the tree, so I'll prune that off. This root comes down and then it goes a little off the radial direction here, so I'm going to prune it back to here. Quite a severe prune on that root, but should recover, I hope. There's a root here going a funny direction. Get rid of that. Prune that one a little shorter. There's a root in here that kind of goes straight down. I don't need that one. Just clean up a bit of congestion in that area, thinning it out a bit, keeping my nice radial roots and pruning away some of the ones that are on a bit of an angle. There's one here on an angle. Prune that away. There's one sticking up here. A few sticking up here I'll get rid of. There's a root here coming up out of the root base, and it starts somewhere in here. Prune that away. Now I think I can go a little
shallower on the root base, taking some more off the bottom. Generally, you want to see the base of the tree from the bottom. You don't want your root base getting too thick. So you can see I can take some more off these roots. So that's sitting quite flat now. Okay, so the only root that still bothers me is this thick one here. I'm not really happy with the direction of it. It's just off radial enough that it bothers me. And can I prune it away? I probably could. There's lots of roots underneath it. I think I'm going to have to. I'll prune it back very short, like that. I think that'll improve it. I think that one's okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty well down to looking good. Down to the minimum. Putting off some of these roots sticking up here. Yeah, so I think that's ready for planting. It's a good looking root base. Okay, so I've got to find a pot for the tree now. I found a oval pot. It's quite large, but I think, you know, this tree will spend probably the next 2 years in the pot, and I think it'll fill it with roots quite easily. And I think, you know, because this tree's in training, I don't want to slow the growth down too much, so I think a large pot will suit it quite well. So I think that's the pot it'll go in. I think that'll be quite good. It'll grow with a lot of vigor in this pot. It's fairly deep. So I'll get the pot ready. I've got the drainage screens in the pot. Now I have to pick a front for the tree. I think last time I had the front somewhere here. I still think that's a fairly good front. So I'll plant the tree like that. So I'll get a base layer of soil in the pot. And now I've got to position the tree. So look from the front here. So I'm positioning the tree now. That's kind of on center, so I'll just shift it a little bit over to this side. I think that's good. The height in the pot, it's just a little high, so I'll just adjust the height to, I think, just about there. Just so you can see a bit of the, you know, the base of the tree. And then I'll comb my roots out for a final time. And I've got to make sure these roots are flowing down into the soil, that they're not too horizontal. So I'll just shape my mound of soil so they're going on a slight angle downward into the soil, like that. And I can start filling the tree in. I could just move it back just a little bit. Yeah, to about there. I think that's good. And then I can start working the soil into the roots. And again, with a flat root base like this, you're pretty well guaranteed all the roots are making contact with the soil, because, you know, there's no cavities in the root system where soil can't get. I'll take a final look at the tree in the pot before I water it. Here's a look at the tree.
I think it's quite good. I think the trunk is good and vertical. I like the position in the pot. A lot of styling to go on this tree, you know, branch selection and that, but it's getting there. So I'll give the tree a water now. All right, here I go, watering the tree. I'll spin the tree around so you can see it from all angles. So here's the front, coming around to the right-hand side, the back, the left-hand side, and back to the front. I have placed some stones on the surface of the soil to hold the tree in place until the roots start filling that pot up. This field maple is making that transition from a stick in a pot to something that looks a little more tree-like. I would say it's in its awkward teenage years. It's in between a bonsai and a seedling. So I think in the next 2 years, you'll see this tree develop a lot. It'll get a lot of branching. And I think it'll look quite different in 2 years' time when I go to repot it next. So there's a big difference between, you know, growing a seedling in a pot with a tangled, messy root system and a tree like this where the root system is all sorted out. It's a lot more valuable as a bonsai than just a seedling growing in a pot. So that is it for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.